Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we're looking to find the best of fun, escapist books from all genres. Today we're doing a review of the book All Too Familiar from Belinda White. And normally I like to hold up the book, but I did this in audio format, so I don't have something to hold up for you. But this book is a fantasy, and I will say that it was a little bit confusing at first because I thought it was just pure fantasy, but pretty close to the beginning somebody is murdered and they have to figure out who done it, a mystery. So it's a fantasy, a mystery, and then about halfway through, like, three sudden potential love interests kind of pop into place. So it's slightly a romance too. So I was surprised. I wasn't expecting all these different genres. As far as plot goes, we start out with our main character is a witch in, we'll call it, mostly modern America, or, something that would look very familiar with cars and cell phones and stuff. And she is part of a witch family who all have magic, but she really doesn't have magic. She isn't even competent at doing things like brewing potions, which, according to the world building in this, is something that even a non-magical person should be able to do. So she has basically no magic. And she was struggling with this, but kind of okay with it, until this murder mystery pops up. So somebody is murdered, and the aunt that she lives with her aunt, her mother, and her cousin. Even though she's an adult, she's like early 20s. Her aunt is implicated as a suspect in the murders case. And so when this pops up, she's dismayed, kind of horrified, oh no, and she wants to help out. She wants to protect her family in some way. So she's like, I really need to get some magic. That will help my family. But the only way that she can think of to boost what tiny little, spark of magic that she thinks she has is to get a familiar, some sort of animal, because having an animal allows you to channel more magic. And any animal technically will work, but if you have very little magic, then you really should get a cat or a dog, because these are the animals that are best at channeling magic. Unfortunately, she's highly allergic. She can't. She's just like, I cannot get a cat or a dog. I'm going to spend the rest of my life miserable because this animal will live with me pretty much forever. And, but she's like, I'm going to sacrifice for my family. So she loads up on allergy pills and goes out to a humane society to try and find an animal. And she comes across a cat, an unusually intelligent cat, and she's not allergic. And she's like, this is a match made in heaven. This is going to be perfect. So late at night, she and her cousin, that they're very close to each other, they come and break into the place to rescue the cat. And they do it this way for reasons. There's an actual reason, but it's also for plot reasons. But anyway, they break in and take out the cat. The cat has been drugged, so he's asleep. And they do a magic spell to bond with this cat. So she now has her familiar. And it does seem to work. She suddenly has magic. But they discover there's a problem. This cat has some magic of his own. And I'm not going to spoil exactly what is up with this cat, but there's definite problem. And dealing with getting the cat, having the cat, and dealing with the problems that come with the cat is one of the main plot points, the string of plot elements that this story has. The secondary plot would be the murder mystery. So it comes alongside, but it's a very light, cozy mystery. The kind that's just not taken very seriously, not in depth in any way. It's definitely lighthearted. Okay, so that kind of gives you an overview of the plot without giving any spoilers about who done it and why, or what's up with the cat, because that's a surprise. I guess it's not a very hard surprise to figure out, but it's there, and I won't spoil it. Okay, so things I like about it. Let's start out with the characters. I really like our main character, Her name is Amy, but it's a first-person point of view story, so it's all I did and I want and I think or whatever. So it's all from her perspective, and she is a very likable, enjoyable character to be with through this whole story. I like the choices that she made. I mean, for the most part, she makes logical choices. She's not perfect, but it's pretty. It's not somebody that you're like, why are you doing that? No, instead it's somebody like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense why you're doing the things you're doing, and she seems like nice, not out to get other people. Even when somebody is mean to her, she tries to be nice back to them. So she's just a nice person. So I like her as a character. I also like the relationship. So this is pretty big with her and her family. So she, like I said before, lives with her aunt and her aunt's daughter, her cousin, along with her mom. So the mom is not in the story at all. She's out traveling the world doing something else. We have no idea. So she's just interacting with her aunt and her cousin. So her cousin kind of strikes me as her best friend. They get along really well. And so her cousin will help her, in any circumstances that she needs, no questions asked. It's a good relationship. Her aunt, however, is a lot more tense. Not antagonistic, but her aunt is apparently, I kind of get the impression that Amy feels that her aunt is very disappointed in her because she doesn't have any magic, and her aunt is a very powerful witch. So you also get the impression that there's some personality clashes there. So her aunt is very strict and disciplined, that kind of person, and Amy is a little bit more free-spirited, let's put it that way. So it's not that they don't get along, it's just that they have tension between them. And I liked this aspect because it felt real. It didn't feel like this made-up family where everything is perfect all the time, but it also didn't feel like the made-up family where everybody hates each other and is totally abusive either. Instead, it's this nice, even, real-feeling family. So I like that. So the relationships and the characters were fantastic. I don't think there was any characters in this that I really disliked. I mean, obviously there's some that you don't get to know because they're minor side characters, but the main characters in the story were all great and likable. That includes the men, the potential love interests as well. I mean, they all seem to be likable but not perfect. So great job on character development. Another thing that I liked is, so this book is clearly going to be part of a series. The series is Accidental Familiars, I think. And the story ends, they wrap up the murder mystery, but they clearly have more issues to deal with. So the issue with the familiar is not resolved in this. The situation with her family isn't completely resolved. There are hints of other mysteries that would be solved in later books. So it's satisfying of an ending, but clearly also set up for the next book. So I would say I liked that because it does have a satisfying, not super abrupt ending. Another thing I really like is the romance. So this is a very, very light romance. You don't even have a kiss in this book. That's how light it is. You go about halfway through the book, and this is a pretty short book. Audio book is 5 hours, maybe 5.5 hours. So that's pretty short for an audiobook. Anyway, you go about halfway through the book before any real love interests pop up. And then it's 3 of them just all at once. You have love interest number 1, which turns out that he has liked her for a long time, and she is kind of just waking up to that, and kind of, heart fluttering and, oh my goodness, I kind of, maybe I like him too, that kind of thing. That's about the level of romance in that. And then you have a second love interest that she's like, oh, I think he might like me, but she doesn't necessarily like him back. And then the third one, which I would just put as a potential, is another man in the circumstances, but he doesn't seem to like her and she doesn't seem to like him, but the circumstances are such that you could see how that could change again in future books. So she doesn't end up with somebody. It's not like a really clear cut, this is the person that she will be with for the rest of her life. No. Instead, it's just more like you can see hints of how in the future in this series this can come about, and the amount of interaction that you have now is kind of cute and sweet and interesting. So the romance, they did a good job with that too. All right. Okay. So the things I didn't like. There were some okay things. So the mystery itself, again, it was really obvious who the bad guy was. I was just like, that's the murderer right there. Well before any of the other characters even thought of this. And so I can't exactly give it good props for being a good mystery, which I have to say, out of all the books I've done so far, I've done several mysteries, or at least sort of mysteries, and I have not found one yet where I haven't guessed the murderer, so I need to find better mysteries. But this is not one of them. So if you're coming for a good mystery, this is not a good book. But it was a decent, for a cozy where that's not really the focus of the book. And because it's not the focus of the book, I do kind of give it a pass on this. If it was billed as a mystery, then I would not give it as good of a rating. But because it's kind of B plot, kind of just there as some other thread to follow through, but it's not really the focus of the story, I'm okay with it not being terribly clever. The world building. So there is magic in this, but it's not clearly defined. I mean, you keep getting trickles and hints like you need ingredients and you need certain circumstances, but you never really understand what this magic system is. What are the rules? I don't know. Towards the very end, you kind of discover that earth magic people are really good at putting up wards and shields, but air magic people are not. And that's about as far as defining any kind of rules you get about this. You just really don't know. So the world building, not great on this. I would have liked a lot more, conversation about this. What exactly is this magic? What can and can't you do? What are the boundaries for this? Can you do anything? Can you do nothing related to, mind, manipulation? I don't know. So that was a little bit, I didn't like that just because it just felt so vague. Ethereal. I don't know. They have magic of some variety. I don't know what it can do. Another thing I didn't like, and this one would be perhaps, maybe somebody else would totally overlook this. There was a plot hole in it. At least I felt it was a plot hole. It's pretty minor, but right at the beginning, when the aunt is accused of potentially being a suspect in the murder, maybe she's the murderer, whatever, our main character and the aunt kind of have a conversation, and it turns out that the aunt did do something. Not something intentionally to kill anybody, not even something that she thought would lead that way, but something that possibly contributed to her dying, the other person dying. And so you look at that and kind of go, oh, that could be a problem. But to me, I find this a plot hole because there's a little bit of worry there that she is culpable, even if she didn't specifically do it, for the murder because she did this one thing. And our main character kind of sits there and goes, oh, maybe she should have some responsibility for this. But as soon as she thinks that, basically, and the story goes on a little bit and more things come out, it basically is dropped. It never really comes up again, never resolved. I mean, somebody died, somebody else did something that did towards that. It's just kind of dropped, like, oh, well, whatever. And it also causes me a problem because it comes up that the police officer that's kind of friendly with this family, recognizes that the aunt must have done something and it might have had some impact on whether this other lady was murdered or not, but he completely drops it. And it seems to be a case of he is friendly with the family, and so the family says, oh, that wasn't part of the murder. Yeah, nah, that totally had nothing to do with it. He's just kind of like, okay, without asking for any details. And to me, this is a little bit of a plot hole slash not very realistic. I didn't really like that. They should have dropped that entirely. And the author should have done something, either tie it up nicely or not have it in the story at all, rather than bringing it up and then just leaving it hanging. So that's another thing I didn't like. And my final thing I didn't like, and this could be more of a personal preference, is the religious aspect of this book. So this is highly religious in the Wiccan religion. And I think from my, not knowing much about it, it seems fairly realistic. So either the author is Wiccan or knows Wiccans or, is very Wiccan positive. Let's just put it that way. Now, I don't have a problem with magic like I like Harry Potter. I have no problem with religion in general. Like I could read a book and have, I don't know, a Muslim character or a made-up religion. Like, if somebody was worshiping some made-up goddess on Mars and they have to hop on their foot every Thursday or something like that to worship them, whatever, all right? That's not the problem I had with it. The problem is it's very, we'll just say, I feel like it was a little bit pushy on the Wiccan religion in a defensive way that I didn't necessarily agree with. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this. So beyond the constant goddess worship going on, but whatever, they worship this moon goddess, I don't care. But the main character encounters, they don't come out and say it's a Christian, but it's pretty obvious that it's a Christian. And she is like, I worship the same God you do, we just also worship the goddess. Now this would be false, because I am a Christian, and they very much don't worship the same God I worship. And it's pretty clear, because if you worshiped my God, you cannot worship another goddess. It's impossible to worship the Christian God and worship a goddess, because if you are, then you're not worshiping my God, because he says if you worship another god or goddess, then you are not worshiping me. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it swims like a duck and you call it a giraffe, it doesn't make it a giraffe, okay? So they say they worship the same God, they don't. And that, it irritated me as a Christian. So again, this religious aspect, because the author is clearly pushing for the Wiccan point of view that yes, we're all one, we all worship the same thing, when me as a Christian look at that and say, no, you clearly don't even try. And it was more than once that they said this. So it irritated me, slightly offended me, honestly, because I love my God, and they clearly don't know anything about that God. So other people might not have any issue with this at all, especially if you're not a strong Christian. You probably don't care about the religious aspect. But for somebody who is a strong Christian like myself, I did care. I didn't like it. It's not enough for me to dislike the book, though. Okay, so the overall, I considered this a fun book. It was a lighthearted, it was a fluffy book. Quick read, not very in-depth on anything, but it was fun. So I am going to include it in my list. I would be willing to read another book in this series. I'd be willing to recommend this book to somebody else. So altogether, overall, I considered it a thumbs up, positive, just because it was fun and enjoyable to read. Yeah, so that's my overall impression of this book, my review of this book. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. Part 2 is what I'm reading next. And I picked a science fiction. So this is from the library. It's All Systems Red, a very small, short book by Martha Wells. And it looks like what this book is about is a robot becomes self-aware and basically rebels against the system. He wants to be his own thing. And maybe, is it assassin? I'm not sure. But it looks like he's kind of goes off and is a grumpy robot by himself. And it's kind of about that. And that sounds fun, a grumpy robot. So that'll be what I'll try next. And I hope you'll join me. Thank you for watching.